if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so that we can share it for anyone that can't attend today. And I'll be monitoring the chat as needed. So I will turn it over to Steve for his presentation.
All right, thank you. And I still have the right screen up there, correct? Okay, very good. So actually, I would like to thank Amy and Kelly and Tracy, because this is results of all the work that I've done with EIO. And then, of course, we can also thank COVID to a certain degree as well, because a lot of this came from adapting and improvising. But anyway, title is Learning and Assessment Through Problem Solving, Designing a Course with a Top-Down Approach. So prior to all of this, and I guess prior to really going online, I taught what's known as current topics, CRM 385. And, you know, my approach was pretty traditional. I have 3 tests during the semester, 100 points each, mostly multiple choice questions. And then I'd have a couple written assignments. And actually, I went back and I looked at them, and one was pretty close-ended. And the other one was a semi-problem based assignment. And then I'd have a group presentation. And I liked my group presentation because I would get debate. I would choose topics that I knew students would debate about, you know, pro or con drugs or gun control. But really the main focus of what I was doing, and I remember spending a lot of time on my lecture. And when I looked at the lecture, I would change it. I would paw at it all the time. I would put in YouTube videos. I would change pictures. I would change the content and such. Just putting a lot into the lecture, try to make it as entertaining as possible. But the reality is I was probably spending about 70, 80% of my time with this right here, with these lectures. And I plucked one that I'd saved. And as you can see here, lots of words there, teaching to a test, not a lot of concepts, but you know, more or less working towards that multiple choice test. And those students that you see there in the my upper right corner, I think were actually cheering at the end of the lecture that day. And this was how I did my testing. You have a test bank, or you design your own tests, and multiple choice tests here. So, you know, for sure there's an answer. And there's a close-ended essay test question that I had there as well. Standard stuff. I mean, when you talk about significance of learning and such, it's really kind of my contention that there's really not a lot of significance to this. There's significance to passing the test and what your test score might be. And that kind of bothered me in the end. Same way here, learning objectives are kind of bland, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the learning objectives here and go over them. There's probably too many of them. I helped write them, so that's my fault. But really, this is where I started to look and see what I was doing. Again, it was part of the CDA process, and it was part of, you know, just changing and working on it. And I think I was addressing the ones that you're seeing in red there pretty thoroughly. The problem is that they're kind of low-hanging fruit. They're easy to meet just through lecture and such. And the underlying ones, I think I was hitting as well, the APA formatted papers and such. But where I was really kind of failing is with the larger font. And those are the higher order thinking learning outcomes that, you know, bothered me that I wasn't meeting them. And so in a process of just tearing things down, my father is an engineer, and I tried to hide it, and I guess there's some left in me somewhere. I dug down and tried to really strip down what was in this session here, what I wanted to do with 385. And the first point to me was the most important point. That is that I know students had some beliefs about the topics that we were discussing, and they had their opinions, and I wanted them to keep their opinions. Maybe I wanted to help inform those opinions a bit, but I didn't want to press mine on them and push mine through. I wanted them thinking on their own and arguing on their own as well. So that was first and foremost in my mind. And I also wanted to present to them the topics like real life problems. There's more than one answer. There's a lot of things that you have to go through to figure out some of these problems are multifaceted. So I wanted to see how complex problems really are. They're not multiple choice questions. Like I always tell my students, if you're a police officer and you go into a domestic violence situation, you don't walk in there and somebody tells you, well, is the answer A, B, C, or D? There's actually a lot that you have to put together to come to a decision. I didn't want to teach students piecemeal anymore, multiple choice question topics. Instead, I wanted to pull back and teach them concepts. Not multiple choice test questions, but concepts that they could use in problem solving. And it was important to me that they understand the concepts on a topic differ and will at times oppose each other. So if I say gun control, there are lots of opinions there and lots of research that they have to wade through. I don't want them to see that. And then finally, the last thing that I really wanted is I didn't want to solve the problems. Just like I didn't want to put my opinion on them. I wanted them to wade through the problems and see the difficulty of these issues themselves. And they're the future. I always tell them, I'm not. I'm old. They're young. But kind of my approach to this when I thought about it was like that paint palette that you're seeing. And that's what I wanted to kind of get out of the lectures and to get out of the readings, was that they're going to paint the canvas and I'll provide to them the paint, but they're going to have to put it together in some way themselves. So after stripping it down, I went and I put it back into the learning outcomes. And this is kind of what I came up with, it that, again, students are familiar with the topics. They probably and most likely have opinions. My job should be to let them voice their opinions. And I hope they're not going to agree, because it's going to create conversation and it's going to create meaning for them when they have to defend their side of the story. So that's awesome if there's disagreement. How can you make students understand and examine topics? Not too well with multiple choice test, but when students start to take the concepts that you give them and apply it to situations, well, then they start to understand it. So case in point, critically examine Chicago gun violence that they have there in gun control as well. Then it takes on meaning. Understand the significance of the issues. Again, my contention is a multiple choice test isn't significant to them, except for the test score. But if you take a mass shooting and they have to go and profile a mass shooter and figure out how to try to prevent a mass shooting, then it becomes significant to them. And of course, they're going to have to plan and collaborate, prepare group presentations, but also I'm going to make it competitive. I'm going to make them disagree. They're going to have to take sides and topics, and they're going to have to debate other groups. So again, try to make it meaningful to them. I understand to a certain degree that identifying, memorizing, and describing are important. You need it there. But I can actually have them, or try to have them, demonstrate it as opposed to memorize it and just give it back to me in a multiple choice test. So use those terms and those items that you've learned to solve a problem. So, I've done the thing and I'm still wrestling with this. about the video. And you're online, and do students really want to watch an hour and a 45-minute video of me reading a lecture? And do they really want to read it if my picture is in the bottom corner of reading and the lecture that they've already read, that they're watching the video anyway? I get confused. So I'm very slowly coming around to just saying, hey, lecture isn't the primary method of teaching anymore. It's solving the problem. Lecture is really presenting the concepts. That's what the book is there for. They're going to learn, and I'm going to assess through the problems that I'm going to present to them. I do use multiple choice tests in some of my classes, but really I kind of use them now so that they learn the terms. They have to push themselves to at least get the terms down and such. But this class I'm talking about, no multiple choice tests. So the short of this here is, more or less, is that problem-based learning, a lot of people talk about problem-based learning. It's not a lecture with a brief fixable problem, so it's not at the front end. Likewise, it's not, hey, give the group a PBL, a lesson, and then we're going to test in a multiple choice exam. Reality is I kind of think of it now as PBLA. Maybe I should copyright that. But PBLA is, the problem is both learning and it's the assessment. So they're going to be engaged in problem solving of different type, and I'm going to be assessing them based on how they attack a problem, not necessarily whether they have the right answer. There may not be a right answer. So in the almost new version of CRIM 385, as opposed to what you were seeing before with the multiple choice tests and such, there are 3 essay tests, very short answer, where students go in and they get 3 essays 3 times a semester, and very short problems. But again, I'm asking for students' opinions and they have to apply the concepts to them. I have 4 critical essays, and really those essays they're looking at programs, the Angel program on the East Coast and how they deal with opioid addiction, and other programs that have been used. Discussion boards, I'm really trying to create debate. I try to get controversial topics where I know students are going to disagree. And then finally, group and work presentation, where from last time I keep in that debate about gun control and drug legalization, and to get students to engage in that and actually give them extra points, and they vote on who the winner is. Textbook, good thing about the designing your own textbook is it's structured based on the class at this point. So what you have is a number of articles in there that have been plucked out, and the articles actually disagree with each other about different ways of gun control, drug legalization, police programs, police use of force, etc. So the students are getting a debate in the textbook. That's what the whole class is about. What we're structured on is them making sense out of all this information, the prefaces, introducing different concepts, such as supply and demand with drugs and guns. So again, I am still struggling with that lecture thing, and eventually I hope to cut it down a lot more. Here's an example now of a test question that students have, and I've underlined the parts for you here. What else could we have done about the war on drugs? Was it successful? How would we actually measure success? And they have to bring in the readings. This is an open book test, and they have to defend what their opinion is and put together the concepts. Discussion board, again, war on drugs. This is really about the different sides of the drug issue. Should drugs be legalized? Should we consider strong enforcement? Should it be government run? And again, students have to state their preference and have to defend their point of view. And the next one is actually, I could have chosen a better slide, but this was a student slide. And I really got tied up in this one because the students went out and they have to interview experts when they do their argument for the group project. And in this case, they found a police officer that had been involved in an undercover drug team in Detroit. And this officer was actually saying that drugs should be legalized. And I thought that was pretty cool that they were able to go out and find that information source on their own. And then finally, the written projects are pretty complex. And I really would like to thank the city of Chicago and some of the policies that they've had, because they've jumped all over the place. But anyway, addressing urban crime in the city of Chicago, specifically violent crime and gun control. We have students that are very pro gun control and other students that are against it completely. And the reality is both of them are right. You just have to justify their position is all, and how it would help in the city of Chicago. And there are short-term answers and there are long-term answers that they have to talk about as well. There's a case study that I told you about, really looking at the supply and demand equation with opioids. Some really interesting stuff, but again, I'm looking for their view, not for my view. And what I found out, I still have 4 minutes, but we'll go fast. What I found out is that 15 weeks that I just described to you in less than 20 minutes actually is pretty exhaustive. And when you have 160 students, you spend a lot of time grading and giving feedback and such. And I thought that it was taking me away from the students to a degree. So I went out and I designed a 7-week course. And in the 7-week course, I had to say goodbye to some assignments that I liked. I changed the value in minimum words in some of these assignments. But really what this gave me is that if I teach it in session 1 and session 2, I don't have 160 students. I have 70 to 80 students. And I can spend a lot more time with the students and give them feedback, good feedback on their written projects. And then we can even redo them at times as well. So I like the 7-week course because it freed up some time for me and allowed me to really interact with the students a little bit more. So I'll be darned if I could get that within 20 minutes when I practice it. And I got a little nervous and I did it in 16. So I must have cut out all the adjectives and adverbs. I don't know.
That was awesome. Steve, I actually have a question for you. How has the feedback that you've received from students changed based on your previous format of lecture and test versus them actually having to think?
There's a lot of structure behind this as well, as you know, and you guys are partially at fault for that, I'd like to add. So they like the structure of the course, the way it's built, and how I try to build it is to keep consistency between assignments. So I'm not always sending them in a new direction. It's more work than the old. And I've had that for feedback. This is too much work. But I've also had students that, are like the fact that they're able to voice their opinion in this class. And it's not going to be criticized or anything. So they like that. And there's a certain population that it takes a while to adjust to this, but they do. And so I think it's been largely positive, to be honest. I don't want to say that. I don't like saying those things about my courses, but it's been largely positive with the feedback and everything. I'm still waiting for feedback on the 7-week course, because there are weeks where we have to double up on assignments. But, you know, I'll see how it happens. But it's been positive, to be honest with you.
I was going to say, it'll be interesting to see too, if you said this was a 300 level class.
Yes.
You know, once they graduate, especially those that want to go on to the academy and become police officers, that if they will then appreciate the conflict resolution and the strategies of being able to voice your own opinion, but having to back that up as a police officer. It just seems like those that are really serious about the profession would really appreciate the skills that you're giving them in this class.
I hope so. I hope so. You know, other courses, I've done the same thing. I've peeled it back. Report writing is that it was strange because I started doing role playing and the reports actually got worse or became worse. And then I figured out that police work is more complicated than I was giving it credit for, because you have to take in information from a lot of different sources. See, there's 20 minutes.
Nice.
So you have to talk to different people, you have to get information, you have to get evidence, and then you have to melt it down into a report. So that process became, we need more interviews, we need more complicated information going into people so that they can put that information and put it in a report in chronological order. So again, this is part of your CDA process in that 6-stage Excel spreadsheet, where you have to go through and you have to look at your learning objectives and you have to match them up. I think that's the first page where you do that. So it's, you know, it's more even process with that. It helps out.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Steve in the last few minutes that we have him?
Yeah, Steve, what's the feedback students give you on doing discussion boards?
I have a really structured way of doing discussion boards. First of all, they have certain times, certain verbiage, or a certain amount of words they have to use and references and such. The debate is pretty good. I've only had to stop a couple of debates when people got a little bit excited, so you have to keep a close eye on it. But you know, otherwise, again, it's been pretty positive, to be honest. And it's so, but you do have to keep a close eye on it and watch it closely.
I just know from taking on a lot of online classes. For me, I'm not really passionate about writing, and that's always been like the drawback. Is like, oh my gosh, another stupid discussion board this week, and it seems like it's just like a kind of hoop jumping through in some courses. Now, other courses, like I think sounds like yours is, where you do get that feedback, like a discussion board should be run back and forth to actually discuss something, makes it a lot more meaningful.
Yeah. I remember we started out with discussion boards and they were the greatest thing in the world. And then I think we overused it and it became, you know, post it and forget about it. So, you know, I try all those tools where, you know, you have to post by Wednesday, your original post, and then you have to wait 8 hours between any subsequent post as well. And don't post late on Saturday night because nobody's going to be reading it on Saturday night. I do all those things, but I think it has to be a topic where you have some differences, where people are going to argue and discuss it. You know, if I had a discussion board, give me the positive aspects of Cesare Lombroso's theory. You know, that's a sleeper.
Yeah.
I use them kind of sparingly as well. I've been at other institutions where every week it's a discussion board.
Yeah.
All right, well, we have about 5 minutes left in before the next session. So I want to thank Steve for this great presentation. If you only got to see part of it, remember that these are recorded so that you can watch them again as many times as you would like, or share them with anyone that maybe didn't get a chance to watch it. And so thank you all for attending, and I'll give you some time to take a break between sessions.
Thanks, Amy.